I'll tell you about that. I got an email from Warden Friedman, the executive office of the president, and I thought it was a joke. I thought, you're invited to come to the White House. We want you to talk. It's about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I thought, well, you know what, I'll send him an email and tell him I accept, I thought it was a joke, It wasn't a joke. I actually went up there. So they wanted, the president has an executive order that he signed October 5th last year, and it has to do with sustainability, and part of it is electronics recycling. And for America Recycles Day, he brought out, and I'm going to read some of it word for word here because I don't want to, he brought out a support for a case that I've been making for the last 20 years of my life. So it's something that was near and dear to me. So it was quite a meeting. We had a lot of people that I didn't even know was going to be there, like Walmart, the chief sustainability officer for Walmart was there. Put his hand on my shoulder 3 times during the meeting because I quoted Walmart's CEO and I didn't even know he was going to be there. And I quote that, you're going to find it quite interesting, I think. What I ended the meeting was, Warren Friedman ran, I was next to Linda Felt from the EPA, and Warren was to my left, and he said, would you have anything you'd like to add, Joe? And it's like Mylan said, I said, I'm going to add this. What gets rewarded gets done. What gets rewarded gets done. That's how we get to start. When we know that, it all falls into place, okay? So if what you're doing is getting rewarded, it'll get done. If it's not getting rewarded, it won't get done. So I try to take that and refine what Mylan was saying down a little bit finer, and that's really the end product of it is if it gets rewarded, it gets done. So we have to come up with systems that reward doing the right behavior, doing the right thing, and reward it economically and other ways as well. So I'd like to talk a little bit. I don't want to take the president out of context, so I want to quote directly. This is from the White House proclamation of November 15th, America Recycles Day. Currently, most discarded consumer electronics end up in our landfills or exported abroad, creating potential health and environmental hazards and representing a lost opportunity to recover valuable resources such as rare earth minerals. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That's what they got me here really to talk about. To address the problems caused by electronic age, American businesses, government, and individuals must work together to manage these electronics through their product life cycle, from design and manufacturing through their use and eventual recycling, recovery, and disposal. To ensure the federal government leads as a responsible consumer, my administration has established an interagency task force to prepare a national strategy for responsible electronic stewardship, including improvements to federal procedures for managing electronic products. This strategy must also include steps to ensure electronics containing hazardous materials collected for recycling and disposal are not exported to developing nations that lack the capacity to manage the recovery and disposal of these products in ways that safeguard human health and the environment, unquote. So that's from the proclamation. The president made an executive order, which is on October 5th, 2009, and that's where part of that policy comes from. These policies are faced. So I went to Washington. Mr. Joe went to Washington. So, and what did we talk about in Washington? Well, they had it down to 6 questions. And let's talk about the first question they had. And that was, what action should the federal government take to further encourage the design, manufacture, and procurement of greener electronics? Well, we have something right now called EPEAT, which is the Electronic Product Environment Asset Tool. I've been on it. I don't know if anybody here heard of EPEAT. Okay. If you haven't heard of it, you can go to green. You just really the best way is to just Google EPEAT, and it'll come up green recycling or green electronics, I think, .org or whatever it is. Anyway, it's going to come up to that. But if you do that, you'll find out there's 3 standards right now. One that's been approved called IEEE, and this is the International Electronics Engineers Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers standard. 1680. Now there's three 1680 standards. One's been approved. 1680.1 is for computers. 1680.2 is for imaging devices, which are basically printers and copiers and scanners, stuff like that, faxes. And 1680.3, which I'm a member of, is video devices like, well, it's just televisions, basically. So I'm on 1680.3, and we met in San Francisco. What we're trying to do is create a life cycle product assessment tool. Hey, what's this product do? When we make it, what does it take to the earth? What energy does it take? What emissions are when we make it? Bring it all the way through its life cycle, and then bring it back into a product again. That's the focus of what we're trying to do. When you look at the amount of plastic that the standard requires us to recycle, it's like 0.5%, not very ambitious. But the point is, to get anything started, to get any amount recycled out of it, as a requirement in that product is great. Because it's not going to stay at 0.5%, it's going to go up. So that was one of the things. So I personally thank the President and his administration for that work. The EPA facilitated that. Industry conducted that, IEEE, but the EPA facilitated that. The EPA provided the resources and the people and all that to do it. That's the first thing. I said that we really need to define the problem. What is electronics, or what are electronics, depending on how you look at it. And that was brought up also by Mike Biddle from MBA Polymers. Well, what are we talking about here? He says anything that plugs in or has a battery was what Mike Biddle was saying. I think we're going to have to consider that a lot better. We have, in the case of smoke detectors, right up there, is a smoke detector an electronic device? Well, if it is it radioactive? And you want radioactive devices included in electronics devices. When you make federal rules, those are the kind of things you got to think about. So we have to really define what is an electronic device and what is an electronic device. That's something, electronics they call it. Here's another one, CFL, compact fluorescent lamp. It has mercury in it. It also has a circuit board in it. So is that I specifically in my written comments to the Council of Environmental Quality asked, hey, are CFLs electronics? Good question, huh? And what's our plan to recover those? Not a very good one, I can tell you that already. So if that's electronics, we're going to start managing that. And President Obama was the one that wrote the legislation when he was a senator to stop the export of mercury into these foreign countries where it's going in the Amazon. We were collecting mercury here in the United States, both mining it as a byproduct, which you're probably aware of, and we were also recycling. We're sending the Amazon, and they were using that to separate gold and pouring the mercury right into the Amazon River, right into fish when people were eating the fish. And I'm talking high levels, literally killing the fish and poisoning the people. Okay, the reason is we're not measuring. We don't know. So this is one of these things that we're going to end up talking about putting in the landfill, huh? Bunches up, comes in your water, next thing you know, gets picked up in your ecosystem somewhere, So the definition thing, we're not really clear what they're going to do there. Then we ask them how we're going to track it. Okay, then they said, here's a word, and Ireland's going to love this. The question was, what are the challenges to designing and manufacturing products in which rare and valuable materials are 100% recyclable and are recycled at the end of product life? What can the federal government do to help address those challenges? 100% recyclable. Wow. Whoa. Yeah. So I went to the Federal Register and I said for this that high-grade copper and precious metal, new CRTs, plastics can be reused in the marketplace. I said, okay, that's correct. I said other valuable materials exist in electronic products as well. There's lead, there's steel, lead, tin, aluminum, and there's rare earths, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. And some of these are necessary for manufacturing products for our defense industries, which is the President's already said that. And may not be available when needed unless stockpiled. So I suggest the task force consider purchasing these materials from recyclers, refiners, and store them in federal strategic metals stockpiles. So the question on the rare metals and the rare earths was, where are our companies already collecting and processing? So the market that you talk about, that's what we need. You want them, buy them, okay? At a price that at least that we can economically do it. When we take a look at the emissions of rare earths mining versus recycling, when you see this story, you're gonna say, whoa, we really need to be doing this. I mean, and we need to start doing it immediately. Okay, which like Tom Friedman said, what do we mean by 100% recyclable or recyclable end of life? So do we mean, quote, like Tom Friedman said, our current approach to recycling is we take bigger and higher quality computers, electronic boxes, and cars, and turn them into lower quality, less sophisticated products, and then we throw them away. It's really not recycling, but downcycling, just slow motion waste and resource depletion. In Cradle to Cradle, book by Donahue, they argue that we can and must make every TV set, chair, carpet, piece of furniture, and computer screen out of material that can be either completely reusable. All product components, they insist, can be designated for continuous recovery and reutilization, eliminating the concept of waste. Well, that's way out there, I think, eliminating the concept of waste, but starting to look at waste as the second or third choice, not the first choice anyway. So, okay, so they said, okay, that's fine. Then they want to talk about, well, how do we make sure that, and transparency like you're talking about is really important. How do we make sure that if we're going to recycle this stuff, it actually goes back into products, it doesn't get shipped to a third world country that has no means of handling it. And there's certification programs. I've been working on certification programs. And as a matter of fact, I wrote it in 1999, and Bill Ruckelshaus did the forward to the book, Herb Lyme's book, I don't know if you've heard, Herb's Recycling Handbook, and then Bill Ruckelshaus did the forward to that. Well, I wrote the first electronics chapter of that, and I talked about standards and certifications in 1999, okay? And it just happened like 3 years ago. I've been working on it long. I was reading National Geographic January 2008, I'm quoted in there still, so I've never stopped. So when I finally got to Washington and got to meet all the people in one room, I said, thank God, we finally got it done. Wow. Now we have 2 standards. And of course, in the middle of this thing, we have a phone call, and we got these people around the table. The person with one standard in the middle of this, imagine this, is calling the other person's standard garbage, no good, and they're getting it. So it was just it was a food fight in the middle of the Council for Environmental Quality's boardroom, if you can imagine that, right? A food fight there, right? We had Russell trading pictures on the wall and Ruckelshaus down over there, and we got these guys in this horrible food fight. So sitting next to Lynn Felt, who's the head of solid waste at EPA, and she stands up in the middle of this and said, stop, I want to put this to bed right now. The EPA endorses both standards, and so I've already endorsed them. I was working on getting both of them pushed through. The 2 recycling standards right now are called R2, responsible recycling, and then E-stewards. So there's 2 of those. So the EPA has come out and basically said to federal agencies, if you use an R2 or an E-steward certified recycler and you're a federal agency, your due diligence ends there because of the audit and other representative audit requirements, your insurance requirements. Okay, we talked about that. What additional, I always like this when the government says, how can the amount of electronics that are recycled in the United States be increased while ensuring they are managed safely and properly? I'm going to save this to the end. We're going to answer a lot of these. What additional infrastructure is needed, and what can be done to encourage development in the United States to responsibly reuse and recycle used electronics from governments, businesses, and private consumers? I'm going to say that to the end. What innovations in electronic design exist that would enable electronics to be tracked until disposal? We talked about that. We talked about RFID tags on products. We talked about tag-ins and all that. Some of the people, which I'm going to call the industry people, you got different shades of people. There's people that want everything done just to the point where there would be no way you could do it. I mean, there's too many requirements you couldn't comply with. And then there's the people that want to do nothing. Okay, I mean, you have those 2 extremes. Okay, the people that wanted to do next to nothing fought the idea of tagging or being able to account for a product. Well, that was horrible to them. They didn't want any accountability, none, zip, nada. It added cost. Their whole thing was cost. And then the other side of the people, their argument was we should have total, complete accountability of everything, and no matter what it costs. So you can see this is going to go. What I proposed was you could have an RFID tag that could have a life cycle information, which would tell you what it's made of and what you do with it. and it come up on a screen, and you can take a picture of it and digitally weigh it as it came through. And then I also said that you should encrypt it with a challenge and a reply encryption to validate that it's a valid product. Because here's what's going to happen. There's going to probably be some kind of deposit or some kind of reward system for consumers to bring the product back. That's going to be probably the thing that's going to draw it back. And we're going to talk about what the retailers are thinking about this a little bit later. This is pretty interesting stuff. You're going to find this pretty interesting. We'll get into that in a little bit. But just keep in mind that a barcode and an RFID tag is a useful means of accounting life cycle information on this product. And also automates it. Okay. So then I actually read out, I said, I make reference to excerpts of the remarks prepared for delivery by Mike Duke, President and CEO of Walmart, at a sustainability milestone meeting July 16, 2009. Quote, as more people reach for a better life, there will be ever greater pressure on the planet's resources, with more energy usage, more carbon emissions, more waste. Experts like the World Wildlife Fund, I stopped there and I pointed on the wall, there was Russell Train's picture hanging right behind me on the wall, so I stopped right there and said, this guy, he found it, okay? Say that if our environmental demands continue at the same rate, we will need the equivalent of 2 planets to maintain our standard of living in another 25 years. 2 planets in 25 years. We got 25 years, we're going to need 2 planets. So let's just say, for just argument's sake, in 12 years, we've got to have this one's done. Let's split the baby. 12 and a half years, we're done. And what do? We see these questions as an important first step in assessing the sustainability of suppliers. But for true transparency, we need an additional, much larger tool for assessing the sustainability of products. So today we're announcing as a second step that Walmart is helping to create a consortium of universities. By the way, University of Arizona State was there, representative from there was there at the meeting. Universities that will collaborate with suppliers, retailers, NGOs. This should be one of them. We should be involved in this. You guys, actually. I'm just supporting you guys. You guys are you guys, and I'm supporting you guys. You guys should be involved in it. And government to develop a global database of information on the life cycle of products, from raw materials to disposal. Okay, so true life cycle. What projects, practices, or efforts are you aware of that address the problem of used electronics being exported and being handled in a way that causes harm to health and environment? And I talked about I was in Mexico, I was invited to Council of Environmental Cooperation, which is a ambassador level treaty organization that was, when we established NAFTA, we established the CEC, and it was to work cooperatively on environmental issues. So I gave many presentations down in Mexico, in Guadalajara last month. What they did brought up there is that they were actually bringing legal law enforcement. They were arresting people for those violations. And also it was brought up that the United States is working with Interpol on a global basis for that. And if you've seen in the news, there have been several arrests and charges filed in the last month for people illegal exporting. How could a public-private partnership resolve any or all of the above? Well, let's go back. I know I'm going to talk about, if you guys want to hear about this, I'll talk about it, and then I'll end with the rare earths. But I'd really like to talk about this because I figured if the president wanted to hear this, you guys probably want to hear it too. So, anybody here not want to hear it? Okay, good. Okay. What I said was that, here's what I envision. I'm going to take a quote where I envision a program where retailers would be provided a fee to register an electronic product to a user. And the OEM would receive payment to cover recycling of the product, which would be placed in an interest-bearing account until such time as the product is recycled. Okay, so the RFID tag could authenticate the product with a challenge reply encrypted authentication, which would allow the recycler to be paid for the recycling of the product. The RFID tag could contain life cycle information on the product, allowing it to be more efficiently recycled. The customer, a digital photograph and the weight of the product could be confirmed at the time of recycling. The customer could receive a credit for purchase of a new electronic product, or perhaps a redemption fee for recycling product. Everyone would win in these transactions. The problem with what they're trying to push down, we had one side of the room was saying, oh, industry pays it, like there's this paying fairy that goes around and pays things, right? Oh, put it on this, well, you're gonna pay for it anyway. Why not make it transparent? I said, why not reward the people that are doing the job? Bringing it back, doing the job, switching it out. The whole room went silent. So somebody tell me a good reason why we should reward people for doing something right. There's nothing, everybody shut about that. And then I said, everybody should get something. This us versus them crap doesn't work, okay? It didn't work in the Soviet Union. It didn't work in communist China. It's not working in Cuba. This us-them crap, the government tells you what to do, and you do everything the government says doesn't work, and I have problems. So, about that time, there's government people in the office or the room were actually looking at me kind of strange, but that's okay. I said, seriously, everyone should win. The government should facilitate this. They should help. They should get it going. They should help to get it started. You don't want them running it. No. And hey, believe me, we do a lot of business with governments. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm trying not to offend them at all. But running things is the facilitating is where they're good at. Running, because they don't have the cost containment is not their top priority. You know what I mean? Put it bluntly. Okay, and they don't have to meet a payroll. They got a taxpayer to meet the payroll. So, but government has a very important role. Then they said, well, what information would be most helpful for you when deciding how to dispose of used electronics? I said, I object to the word dispose, okay? I believe that more electronics LCA information should be available to everyone. Okay, I believe the manufacturer should be given incentive to provide this information. So, and we got that fed right into what Walmart, we were talking about Walmart. Okay. Then I went to the ultimate thing, if we really want to be revolutionary here, how do we want to pay for all this good green stuff? You got an idea. Somebody got an idea. Somebody give me an idea I can grab a hold of. And I said, yeah, I got an idea. It's an old idea, but it's a good idea. And it's never been used as it was said in Free to Choose, probably because it would work. Okay, that's why it's never been used. So it's never been tried. Okay, but the idea is this. I propose that Benjamin Graham's Commodity Reserve Plan be considered as a method of storing the value of emissions from recycled commodities. The reserve plan could be utilized to place a money value to clean air, land, water, flora, fauna. I believe environmental credits should be at least 10% of our money supply. Benjamin Graham was a mentor to legendary investor Warren Buffett. His testimony before the United States Senate Banking Committee on March 11, 1955, Benjamin Graham talked about a commodity reserve plan. And he said, the chairman said, what is your commodity reserve plan? I understand you have one. I can put it in very few words, as it's related to your question, the future of our economic system. In the last 20 years, I've identified a concept of stabilizing the economy by stabilizing the price level of raw materials taken as a whole and not in individual commodities. The objective is to permit the individual commodities to fluctuate, but to establish a narrow range of fluctuation and virtual stability for the value of market basket of the important commodities. I've added to the very important factor, quite radical, that those commodities would represent a sound backing for our money, because they represent the things we need and use, and by so doing, they would become commodity reserves. And the thing that and would be self-financing in the same way our gold reserves are self-financing, well, they're not self-financing anymore. The consequence would be that by stabilizing pretty well the general level of raw material prices, you would add a very important degree of stability into the general economy. So I still believe that. Every chance I get, I make that case. Otherwise, where is the credit, where is the value for the person who didn't pollute? You're subsidizing the polluter. You're subsidizing the person that's putting the emissions in the air. You're subsidizing, you're rewarding them. So what are they going to do? They're going to do more of it, right? Well, because what gets rewarded gets done. Anybody in your room want to argue here? I'll give you this room. Anybody want to argue with that? What gets rewarded gets done. I mean, that's kind of, I'll argue with you. It's what gets rewarded gets done. And I gave them the example. I actually had somebody in the room, didn't quite understand what I was talking about. What gets rewarded gets done. I said, we ever been to a store and have a mother with a son, a little blonde-haired, freckled kid, and he wants a candy bar? Have you ever seen this? And the kid starts making a scene, shouting, I want a candy bar, give me a candy bar, I want a candy bar, I want a candy bar. And she says, no, 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 no. And what's she do in the end? She gives them the candy bar, right? And then she'll turn to you and say, I honestly don't know why he does that. lady. You just rewarded him for doing it. He's going to keep on doing it forever, and he's not going to just do it now. When he gets older, he's going to do it, right? Because you're reinforcing it. If you took him out back and spanked him, he didn't go to jail, he'd probably, at least you would not be reinforcing that behavior. By giving him the candy bar, you reinforce that behavior. You're rewarding him. So that was my point on that.